Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Behavioural Exchange 2018, or BX2018, the annual and international Behavioural Insights Conference. It's great to see so many people who have made the trip to Sydney from not just across Australia, but from across the world. We have more than 600 delegates with 60 speakers from 15 countries, and there are more than 250 organisations represented here at BX2018. It's clear to see you are all keen to hear more about new frontiers in behavioural insights and wish to embrace and learn how behavioural insights, or BI, can be applied to public policy. On behalf of all speakers presenting at this conference, our objective is to create an environment where you can ask questions, debate, collaborate and expand your professional networks. Hi, my name is David Ireland and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at ThinkPlace, a strategic design and innovation consultancy. Today I will be your chair. And my colleague Nina Terry, our Chief Methodologist, will be chairing tomorrow. I hope you find this approach energising and a little innovative. At this point, I would like to pass on Virginia Hausiger's apologies and regrets. Virginia, who's the Director of the 50/50 Foundation by 2030, has withdrawn from her chair role due to some unforeseen circumstances. Virginia is sorry she can't be here, but she sends her wishes for a wonderful and enjoyable conference. Now, as anyone who has organised an event will know, it's certainly not done by one person. So I would like to acknowledge all of the teams of people who have helped to bring this conference to fruition. I'm sure that we're all going to have a wonderful and fantastic conference. I'd also like to acknowledge our other international speakers and the heads of international BI units and BI teams across the Australian government, academic and the private sector. It's also great to see that we have more than 39 students in attendance. Now, for first-time visitors to Australia, we're going to do something very important and that respects the traditional owners of Australia, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Protocols for welcoming visitors to country have been a part of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures for thousands of years. Despite the absence of fences or visible borders, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander groups had clear boundaries separating their country from that of other groups. Crossing into another group's country required a request to permission to enter, much like gaining a visa does today. And when that permission was granted, the hosting group would welcome the visitors, offering them safe passage. While visitors were provided with safe passage, they also had to respect the protocols and the rules of the landowner group while on their country. Today, obviously, much has changed, and these protocols have been adapted to contemporary circumstances, but the essential ingredient of welcoming visitors and offering safe passage remains in place. To offer the official welcome to country, I'd like to invite Uncle Ray Davison to the stage. Uncle Ray is from the Metropolitan Land Council, and we will also be hearing a special didgeridoo performance by Matt Doyle. Please note that during this presentation, we will be shutting the doors out of respect for Uncle Ray and Matt, but also for the process. If you'd please join me in welcoming Uncle Ray and Matt to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that lovely welcome. My name's Uncle Ray Davison. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council. The Lands Council and its members being the custodians to the clan groups of the Eora Nation, once again give me permission to come along and welcome you to country. It's really lovely to be here today. Each and every time I have opportunity to give welcome to country, I love expressing, and I do this each and every time, to the people that I'm talking to, the importance of welcome to country and what it means. And so at the beginning of my welcomes, I love passing on to people. I don't have a set speech or a set talk. I do what I call having a yarn. Within that yarn, I deliver the protocols of welcome to country. It'll be no different today. So it doesn't matter if I have the opportunity to give welcome to country once a year or 100 times a year. Each and every time I have opportunity to give welcome to country, I look upon it as the first time, because I'm of the thought that there has to be somebody hearing welcome to country for the first time, or maybe somebody hearing me for the first time. So I'd like to make it special in those regards. So you just heard a moment ago from that wonderful introduction that welcome to country as its origins right here on the east coast of Australia. And welcome to country's been around for thousands of years, and we've always had welcome to country when we travel from clan land to clan land, or we have big corroborees and we celebrate by song and dance. And it's done today as I'm doing it orally, and it's no less significant. It holds the same importance. So Today, this is a gathering, this is a corroboree, so we're here today continuing on that tradition that's been going on for thousands of years, because Welcome to Country doesn't see Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal or your ethnicity, it just sees us as Australians. So having the opportunity to come along and give Welcome to Country and celebrate with you it's really wonderful. Because if you can imagine Welcome to Country being around for thousands of years, so if you think of in the context of corroboree, how many corroborees that would initiate in a year and then turn that into thousands of years, you can get the feeling that the importance of it and what it means to our culture. And this area here, Cockle Bay, is on my clan land, and it's one of within our cultures, a really significant area for Aboriginal dance for those thousands of years. So once again, to each and every one of you, welcome. Now look, I can't help it, each and every time I give Welcome to Country, I do get really cheeky about being on, and I say this each and every time, being on the most beautiful traditional land in the most beautiful city in the most beautiful country in the world. And I say that repeatedly, but I mean it. But all of my fellow Australians here today, you know that being born on country, and when we say within Australia to our overseas visitors, when we say being born on country, it's the area of Australia that you're born in. Wherever country you come from, we all believe in our hearts that we come from the best country. So, and I love using this analogy. You may come from a little town that has some beautiful river system or some wonderful mountain range or some quaint little church, and so when you're away from country, you think of home and you think of country and you think of your family and your friends and so forth. And or I love also using this analogy, or you may come from the city, and so your best memories are around high school years and once again your family and friends. But just remember, when you're away from country or you're going home to country, it's not just your direct ancestors who are there greeting you and farewelling you each and every time you come and go from country, but it's the people that have been on that land for thousands of years. They know you as well. They farewell you and greet you each and every time you come and go from country. So I love saying that to people to give you an understanding that Welcome to Country incorporates and covers all Australians. So it doesn't matter if we've been here for 10,000 years, 1 year, or a new child born today. So on behalf of each and every one of my fellow Australians here today, to our overseas visitors, welcome to Australia, welcome to Gadigal land, and to my fellow Australians, whatever country you all come from today, welcome to the most beautiful country in Australia, Gadigal land. To each and every, and I'll say that to all traditional people here today with apologies tongue in cheek, because as I said a moment ago, no matter what country we come from, we all come from the best country. But look, no matter where I go on my traditional land, I have a connection with it, and it's not just from that traditional perspective, but it's from an urban Australian, urban Aboriginal Australian perspective of being born on this land here and growing up through the 50s and 60s and seeing the changes here. And so no matter where I go on my traditional land, I have a connection. So coming down here, my connection with this area here is this was one of the biggest goods yard in Sydney, railheads in Sydney, for many, many years before it turned into what it is today. And as a young truckie back in the 60s and 70s, I used to come down here and do loads of from around this area, from the goods yards and from the waterfront here. So once again, that connection, no matter where I go on traditional land, you all have it too. No matter where you come and go from country, you have that memory and those connections to it. And that's what we talk about when we talk about being on country, because you know when you go somewhere for the first time or you go to a house for the first time, you feel good or you don't feel good. And that's country telling you that it's safe here or it's not safe here. So it's not just an Aboriginal thing, it's a human thing. It's within all of us. We only have to take notice of it. So once again, to each and every one of you, welcome. And just in keeping with Aboriginal custom and protocol, I'd like to pay respects to elders and descendants, both past and present, of my people, the Gadigal people, the people of the Eora, and thank them for the caring of the waterways and the land for the thousands of years of which we all benefit from today, and extend that welcome and gratitude to each and every one of you, and pay respects to your elders and descendants, both past and present as well. But without those people, none of us would be here today. And when we pay respects to elders past and present, we remember that they just aren't a date or a name from the past. They're real people that had real lives and real achievements and real sorrow, the same as we are today. So we pay that respects each and every time. So once again, to each and every one of you, welcome to my country, welcome to your country, welcome to our country. And just in closing, these words I'll say at the end always have great meaning and great importance, because we believe within our culture that there are thousands of our ancestors around us at any given time, the same as all of you. And on behalf of those people, I'd like to say to each and every one of you, may the spirits of my ancestors walk beside you and protect you whilst you're on Gadigal land, Eora country, as I know they walk beside and protect me. And please excuse me, I'll be walking up the back now, listening to my brother. Welcome you all, because I've got to run off and be somewhere else, and please don't think it's little of me, because as I said a moment ago, each and every opportunity I get welcome to country is really important. The next welcome to country is as important as the last, and so forth. So to each and every one of you, once again, welcome.
That was fantastic. I don't know about you, but every time I hear the didgeridoo, I get the spine tingling feeling. I think there are few instruments that are as emotive and as visual as a didgeridoo. And when you compound that with the challenge of circular breathing, it's a really impressive performance. So thanks very much. What a wonderful start to BX 2018. So let's get into it. We've got a lot to get through and I'm really excited to be your chair for today. We're fortunate to enjoy BX 2018 in this wonderful venue. I won't go into too many of the details here, but it's best that you know that we have the whole third floor available to us today, and you'll find all the usual conveniences and facilities that you would expect close at hand. Wi-Fi is available, the username is BX 2018, and the password is Insights with a capital I. I'm sure everyone has already done it, but in case you haven't, can you please turn your phone off or at least to silent? One thing that I'd like to mention is that if you would like assistance with information or help with anything BX related, please look for members of Beta who are wearing the BX turquoise polo shirts. Now here's a hint, on the back of their shirts you will see the sign "Nudge me" if you need help. Could we get all of those Beta people wearing those shirts please stand up and wave for a moment? You can see that I'm also waving, I'm wearing a shirt as well. But if you need help, you're better off going to one of those other people, don't come to me. As you would be aware, bringing a conference together is no easy feat, and Beta has been supported by event partners that have helped to make BX 2018 a reality. So we'd like to say thanks to the Commonwealth Bank of Australia for their sponsorship of the Rising Star Awards showcase event and reception, and also to Cambridge University Press. Now let's talk about what you can look forward to later today. If you want to keep track of your program and the various breakout sessions, please delve into your delegate bag and refer to the program. In your bag is the showcase document, which will soon be available on the PM&C website. Following this morning's plenary session, we will move into our session breakouts or journeys, and I'll talk more about those later. This afternoon, we have other breakout sessions before our fireside chat with Cass Sunstein. And then to finish our first day at BX 2018, we will have the Rising Star Awards showcase. At this event, we will present the Beta Rising Star Award for policy-related research in applied behavioural insights, and the CommBank Rising Star Award for financial wellbeing and behavioural insights. For the moment, let's focus on our event format for the morning. It is as follows. Shortly, we will be hearing from Dr. Martin Parkinson, the Secretary of the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. Dr. Parkinson's address will be for 30 minutes. I'll then be inviting Kate Phillips to the stage. Kate is the principal of the Victorian Behavioural Insights Unit, and Kate is going to facilitate the BX 2018 Keynote address with Professor Cass Sunstein. And following Professor Sunstein's keynote, we will move to morning tea, where over a coffee and a biscuit and maybe a conversation, we'll help each other digest some of those key insights and messages that we will have heard from Dr. Parkinson and Professor Sunstein's speeches. We will be photographing today's event, and photos will be used for our social media content and posted to the BX 2018 website. I'd also like to welcome Simon Banks, a graphic recording artist, who will be capturing the great moments in some of the sessions with his trusty texter. His work is fabulous, and it will be great to see how he depicts some of the discussions. If you are a member of the Twitterati, please join us by using the hashtag BX2018. We would love it if BX2018 was trending on social media, so please tweet. So, today we are pleased to welcome Dr. Martin Parkinson, AC, PSM, to the Secretary of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, to provide the opening address. Very briefly, Martin has been the Secretary of PM&C since 2016, and he was previously Australia's Secretary to the Treasury and the Department of Climate Change from its establishment in December 2007. All, would you please join me in welcoming Dr. Martin Parkinson to the stage. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Let me also warmly acknowledge Uncle Ray Davidson's fantastic welcome to country, and allow me to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. And allow me to show my respects to their elders past and present, and also to extend that respect to all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues who may be here today. One piece of advice for our organisers, if you want to give a nice nudge to the speakers, it would be good to let them actually see who they're speaking to. I can't see a thing with the lights in my eyes. So you're just a whole pile of black spots out there. So very important black spots, but black spots to me. Let me also warmly acknowledge Cass Sunstein. Cass presented via video link to this conference when it was last in Sydney in 2014, and we're absolutely delighted to have him here with us today. So Cass, thank you very much for making what is a very short trip. And I have to say, I think people will be very interested in your reflections on how rapidly this field has changed even over that last 4 years. Now, towards the end of 2010, Time magazine headlined on its front cover its 50 best inventions of the year. In the magazine's words, the list features the biggest and coolest breakthroughs in science, technology and the arts. Pretty impressive, eh? At the very top of the list, coming in at number 1, was an invention called the Neo-Nurture. Now, the Neo-Nurture was an incubator. It was aimed at saving the lives of babies in countries that might not have ready access to modern devices. The goal was absolutely clear and absolutely admirable. Build a simple, cheap machine that could be used in developing countries to keep premature babies warm in those precious few days of their faltering lives. Now, the genius of the machine, to use Time's words, was that it was made from old car parts. The headlights would provide heat, a repurposed dashboard fan would circulate air, the door chimes and signal light assembly became the alarm system to alert caregivers when something went wrong with the heating, and the device could even be powered by a motorcycle battery. The parts were relatively easy to procure, low cost if they had to be made, and incredibly easy to maintain. Really important things you'd think of, given the sorts of environment in which the Neo-Nurture was going to be used. So it sounds fantastic, a potentially simple solution to an incredibly serious problem. There are, after all, no problems of greater magnitude than those concerning life and death. So how many premature babies do you think Neo-Nurture has been used on? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Say, put your hand up if you think it was, say, 10,000. Anybody? Or do you know the story? You know the story, don't you? The answer is 1. 1. And that 1 was the child who was used to model it on the front page, on the front cover of Time. Why did Neo-Nurture fail, and why did it fail so spectacularly? Well, you're expecting me, because you've already know the story, to say the inventors forgot to put humans at the centre of their design. Well, that's not actually true. It's not quite the right answer. One of the inventors said he and his research team, this is Timothy Prestoro, said that he and his research team conducted months of user research, speaking with people on the ground in the hospitals. They listened to what people said they wanted, paying close attention to the people who'd used the machine, and they designed something that would benefit poor families, rural doctors, overloaded nurses, and repair techs. In the inventor's words, we thought we had all the bases covered. So what went wrong? Well, the inventors didn't account for all their stakeholders. They failed to recognise that the humans who would play a big role in getting the project off the ground and into hospitals in the first place, the humans involved in manufacturing, finance, distribution and regulation. They actually needed to account not just for the humans who would use the machine, but also the humans who would choose the machine. There were some concerns about how the machine looked and whether parents would really want their kids to be in something that was cobbled together from car parts. But the real issue was that they forgot about the fact there'd be a gap between the people who'd be using it to save lives and the people who'd be sitting far, far away making a decision about whether or not to purchase or fund the machine. The good news is that they recognised the mistakes and applied those lessons to the Firefly incubator, which by 2016 was already being used in 23 developing countries. So what are the lessons out of this? Well, there's a couple. You've got to think broadly and inclusively about all of the stakeholders. And let me assure you, as somebody who has spent nearly 40 years in public policy, almost all of our mistakes end up coming about because we haven't thought about all of the stakeholders and the different motivations and incentives they've got. So whether it's in thinking about an issue like the neo-nurture or broader public policy, we've really got to be clear about who the human is when we're talking about human-centred approaches. The other thing, though, that I think that's good from the neo-nurture story is it reinforces that rather than seeing failure as a mistake, as something that's gone wrong, you see failure as something that actually helps teach us. I'm personally a great fan of the GE philosophy, which is fail fast. That is, give something a go. If it's not working, make a decision quickly about whether or not to cut your losses and move on, or whether or not you can fix it through an intervention or two. But the really important thing is don't be emotionally attached to the policy or the idea. Even if it's yours, don't be emotionally attached to it, because that's where you begin to make mistakes. So I think this example illustrates the sort of contradictory forces at play for some of us charged with trying to make the world a better place. And that's what you're really trying to do if you're committed to public policy. The solutions to some of our really big problems have to be found by thinking about the smallest, simplest solution. But finding those solutions really requires us to be very hard-headed about what is the right end goal that we're attempting to pursue here. Now, these sorts of considerations, I think, are more important now than they've ever been. Like all countries, Australia faces some really significant policy challenges. Take the area of health, which you're going to talk about this afternoon. We know that overall health outcomes are improving, and improving dramatically. Australian males can expect to live probably about 82 years. Australian females, over 84. So anywhere between 5 and 10 years longer than OECD average. Yet the number of Australians who are overweight and obese has risen to well over half of the population. And people are now having to manage modern illnesses like type 2 diabetes, which is particularly acute in our Indigenous community. So you've got this irony. As a community looked at large, we're healthier than we've ever been. We're living longer, but we're at greater risk from more complex illnesses. We're also getting more detailed and complicated picture about some health interventions and how we grapple with repercussions of these. For example, the overprescription of antibiotics has led to increasing drug-resistant superbugs, and we've seen recent advice that suggests that arthroscopic knee surgeries may not produce any better results than avoiding surgery altogether. What about the environment? Another area where we've got big challenges. Again, sticking with the Australia story, we produced 64 million tonnes of waste last year. 64 million tonnes, which is a sort of a number that's pretty hard to get your head around. Now, we're going to need new and better incentives and solutions to use less, recycle more, and turn our waste into energy. Because 64 million tonnes a year, each and every year for the indefinite future, has got to go somewhere, and it's not obvious where it goes unless we find a way to use it, to reuse it. Now, there are many other challenges, all of which are serious and important. Our ageing population, housing affordability, the scourge of domestic violence, energy security, congestion in our cities, the infrastructure in our regional and rural areas that needs refreshing. So we've got to tackle all of these sorts of problems while the world around us is changing at breakneck speed. We talk about disruption to industries, but just think about the sort of technological changes that we're seeing. 10 years ago, we saw the first smartphone, and we had 6 billion connected devices online. Today, there's 15 billion, and that pace is accelerating. We're seeing huge advances in bioengineering, artificial intelligence, robotics, and blockchain. The pace of change, this fourth industrial revolution, is such that we're going to have to buckle up for a quite wild ride, which is going to present enormous opportunities, but also very significant challenges for us. Now, I've talked about this for the Australians in the audience at length in the past. These technological changes are going to help drive economic growth and productivity growth and new jobs, and that's going to be fantastic. But they're also going to lead to some jobs being made technologically redundant. That's not new. The question is whether the scale of technological redundancy is going to be new. Some full-time jobs are going to be replaced by one-off jobs in the gig economy. Some workers are going to find that their wage growth is going to flatline, not just temporarily, but perhaps permanently, unless we can find ways to re-equip them and re-skill them. So the point of all of this is that whether it's the technological change, whether it's the need to address these big social and societal problems that I talked about, a lot of what's happening around us is giving us a lot more life choices. The flip side is, though, that we may actually be at risk of making worse choices, as per the obesity example. So the wealth of information we've got available is creating a scarcity of attention to devote to it. Now, I've just talked about economic and social issues, but think also about the disruption that's occurring in a geostrategic sense. And this region is actually the centre of that geostrategic disruption. The international strategic order is changing, the commitment to the rules-based international order that has actually been one of the sort of just hidden and accepted backdrops to the way in which we've operated over the last 60, 70 years is actually being eroded. What is that going to do to the space in which we as societies have to make decisions about tackling some of those other problems that I talked about? Because at the end of the day, remember, we've got scarce resources and we're going to have to think about where we allocate those resources. I think whether you're looking at Australia or in many other economies around the world, both emerging and developed, citizens are expecting more from government, and rightly so. And one of the corollaries of successful and richer societies is that people demand more from their governments in terms of the services they traditionally supply as countries become richer. And yet, in a way, the loss of trust in public institutions, and institutions more generally, actually undermines that, because it's almost as if the citizens actually mistrust both our competency to deliver the things that we say we're going to deliver, but they also mistrust our beneficence. That is, the sense that we're really committed to trying to do things that are right by them. So how can we use behavioural economics to address some of these complexities? Now, I'm not naive enough to believe that even the most enthusiastic and dedicated champion of BI would suggest that it's the panacea for the medley of modern challenges I've just outlined. But for those of us making policy, I think BI offers us some real suggestions on better ways to do things, a way for us almost to anchor ourselves in the hurricane of information and change that's occurring around us. Behavioural economics reminds us that people don't always behave in ways we expect. It reminds us to question our assumptions on how well we know what people want or think, how they engage and make decisions, what shapes and drives their daily interactions. It teaches us to ensure we don't just consider our own perspectives, but those of a broader and diverse group around us. And as I said in an address to the APS, the Australian Public Service, last year, being the public service means we need to get to know the public we serve in all the depth and breadth that it encompasses, better than we do today. Because the presumption that we know what the citizen wants, if it hasn't been totally disproven to everybody in this room, then it should be under fair amount of attack. Our work needs to reflect the fact that behaviours, expectations and challenges look very differently if you live in regional and remote Australia than if you live in a city. It needs to account for the experience of minority groups, for the perspective of businesses, large and small, which will be very different, and for households of big families or for those who are living alone. We need to make sure that the services that we deliver actually suit the person who receives them, instead of, as I think we've done for way too long, suit the organisation that delivers the service. For these reasons, I'm particularly proud that BETA, the Behavioural Economics team of the Australian Government, sits in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. BETA is working across the public service, working collaboratively to make sure humans are at the centre of our thinking. Excuse me. One benefit that I see in particular is the use of randomised controlled trials. There's nothing new about RCTs. The medical profession's been using them for years. In a clinical setting, they're a way to test as definitively as can be known what works and what doesn't. And yet in the context of public policy, testing what works is not yet routine. But not only can these methods lead to better evaluation, they're frequently cheaper. And one of the things we've got to tackle is overcoming the resistance both of us as public servants, of our political class and of our society more broadly, that pilots and randomised trials are an essential way to go forward. Proper evaluation out of RCTs ensures that we do something different because of what we learned or didn't learn about human behaviour, not because of the biases that I've brought to the public policy issue. It helps us understand how people will respond so we can build those responses into our policy from the beginning. But we've got a long way to go. As I said, the public service needs to get better at improving citizens' experience of government, and that imperative forms part of the terms of reference of the independent review of the Australian Public Service announced last month by the Prime Minister and the Minister assisting the Prime Minister for the Public Service. We need to become better aware of our own biases and limitations. We need to be working across paradigms, reaching out to the private sector, to academia, to local communities, in fact, to wherever ideas are. Those ideas might be found by talking to patients and doctors at a GP clinic in the outback or by scrutinising a huge data set. There are great opportunities to combine behavioural economics with some of the most exciting technological innovations, such as machine learning. The number of people here today, though, to me, confirms a growing interest and depth in the field of behavioural economics. When Richard Thaler and Dan Kahneman, now both recognised with Nobel Prizes in economics, along with others who could also claim to be amongst the fathers of behavioural, mothers of behavioural economics, it's easy to forget how far the field has come in a short period of time. Behavioural economics began by assisting people to keep their doctor's appointments, pay their bills and save more for retirement. It's still doing that, and those things are really important. But now the scope's widening to including employees, getting employees back to work quicker, helping nurses track patients' vital signs, managing peak traffic demand in major cities. But it needs to get wider still. And that's why I think that your great debate tomorrow afternoon, there are no more easy wins in applied behavioural insights, is absolutely critical. I don't actually believe that that title is correct, but I'm sure it's going to be passionately argued because it's such a great question. So one of the things I'd like my folk to be able to come back and talk to me about at the end of this conference is how can we support, we, the broader public policy community, support the various behavioural economic units in Australia and those around the world to continue to look for new wins? Is there a second generation of behavioural economics we can harness to guide our approach to tackling the tough challenges in our hospitals, our homes, our oceans, our schools and our remote communities? At the end of last year, I put out a challenge to the APS and I said, think of your big idea, because after all, as policymakers, your stock and trade is ideas. But equally, if you're a program deliverer, your stock and trade is the delivery of big ideas. So how do we develop those ideas? How do we refine those ideas? How do we deliver those ideas? And how do we learn from the experience of delivering? So to do any of that, we need to ensure that we don't operate in an echo chamber. And I think the next 2 days of this conference is a fantastic opportunity to make sure that we're not in an echo chamber, that we are exposing our ideas to different perspectives, different viewpoints, and to have them challenged. And I hope, at the end of it, all 650 of you who have registered for this conference are able to walk away confident that behavioural economics is going to make the world a little bit better, a little bit easier, a little bit cleaner, a little bit simpler, or a little bit faster, or all of the above. I hope it leads to big ideas that are simple yet sophisticated and have people, the right people, at its heart. And I have to say, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to open this conference with such a huge mandate in front of you. So, don't worry about it, guys. I'm confident you can do it. But now, it's over to you. Thank you very much.